Good morning to the Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, online viewers, radio listeners via State Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM and respective radio stations island-wide. I'm Relika Roach and welcome to the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Dr. Anders Rudolph Samuel, to address you. Minister Samuel, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Relika. Good morning. Good morning to you and your team. Good morning, PM. Good morning to my colleagues. And good morning and a blessed day to the people of St. Martin. Together with persons of my cabinet and the Acting General Secretary of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, I visited the National Institute of Professional Advancement, NIPA, on Monday, February 8, 2021. The orientation visit was led by the NIPA Supervisory Board of Directors and key persons in the Institute. We received a hands-on tour of the skill labs, including the automotive lab, the AC refrigeration lab, the ICT lab, electrical installation lab, and the carpentry area. I was able to interact with many students and discuss with them their experiences at NIPA. I was also able to visit the new School of Nursing cohort and the stimulation lab area, which is currently being developed. The visit culminated with a tour of the culinary and hospitality area, where the students of NIPA served mixed drinks and snacks to us who were there and the other guests. During the visit, we took the opportunity to meet with the Supervisory Board of Directors and management to discuss various issues critical to the institution. Discussions on the possibility of assisting students of certain programs with funding, the expansion of the campus, and the way forward for the technical vocational education were some of the topics elaborated on. I would like to thank the team of NIPA for their hospitality and professionalism during our visit, and will definitely continue to support NIPA in their efforts to contributing to education on St. Martin. It is important to note at this moment that up until this morning, I have not received any questions from Parliament regarding NIPA. I repeat, I have not received any questions here at the ministry from Parliament regarding NIPA. I did take note of the comments in the media, and I asked the administration to verify if any letters came from Parliament regarding NIPA. There are 2 letters that came from Parliament. One came from Member of Parliament Gums, dated January 26, with UV number 111-2020-2021, and one came from Member of Parliament Duncan on January 18th with UV number 105-2020-2021. Both letters regarding questions of different topics was received on that date, but up until now, Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports have not received any questions from Parliament regarding NIPA. The following topic. On February 8th and 9th, 2020, a delegation consisting of representatives from Teachers Training Institute in Aruba, IPA, and Osewe and Bonaire had meetings with the various stakeholders in education on St. Martin. This visit was to appraise the educational stakeholders on St. Martin of the existence and the development of Kibrahacha, as well as to establish the needs regarding teacher training and further team development. Kibrahacha was established out of a partnership protocol signed in February 2019 by the ministers of Curaçao, Aruba, and St. Martin, and the Dutch Ministry of Education, Culture and Science, OCW, to strengthen the teacher training in the Caribbean part of the kingdom. Gibraltar has several goals in relation to its workplace curriculum. Over the next 4 years, Gibraltar will develop the workplace curriculum and connect it to critical professional situations. All stakeholders receive detailed information on the vision of the partnership regarding training together and the Caribbean teacher. In addition, the different roles and responsibilities within Gibraltar now and in the future were provided. The workplace learning was also addressed during this presentation. At this moment, I would like to say a big thank you to the team of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports and the team of Mr. Connor of the NRPB for all the efforts and hard work that has been done in order to make the commencing of the school repairs under the trust fund possible. We all have read that 3 of the 19 schools will begin repairs shortly, and this is after a long-awaited period of nearly 3.5 years. Nevertheless, we of the Education, Culture, Youth and Sports Ministry, and those of us that are very, keeping a good eye on education, we know the importance of having these schools repaired, and we thank you for this. I will also like to provide some information that was requested by Stephen Cerillion of PJD2 Radio last week. And the question of Mr. Cerillion was, how many applicants thus far have applied for study financing? Up until now, we received 80. Up to this date, we have received about 80. And the top 3 places of study is the Netherlands with 34%, United States 29%, and St. Martin 17%. The areas of study, the top 5 areas of study up until now is healthcare/medical, financial accounting, and information technology also plays a role in the top 5. So we have healthcare, medical, financing, accounting, information technology, social work, and business/entrepreneurship. So far, 64% have chosen non-priority areas. We are awaiting the other applicants, as we all know that the deadline is on the 12th of February. I thank you and I await any questions.
Thank you, Minister Samuel, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Artwell Edion, to address you. Please note that Minister Edion will be leaving after his opening statements. Minister Edion, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Good morning to you, my colleague ministers, the media, and everyone viewing and listening via the radio live stream. Today is the deadline to register for COVID-19 unemployment support and income support for both January and February. Payments for January and February will commence in a week from now, so please sign up today. Also, if you know anyone that falls on this program, please give them a friendly reminder that today is the deadline. In regards to road tax, I would also like to remind everyone that the deadline to pay your 2021 road tax is February 28th. Though there are 3 ways to pay, we encourage you to use the online payment system where you are able to pay for multiple plates simultaneously online, meaning you can do this for your entire household. You can find more information regarding the road tax pinned on the Facebook of government and also on the website. There's also a drop box which is located at the front of the government building, and cash payments are still available for those without online banking available to them. As you may know, last week we passed 3 laws in regards to the conditions set by the Netherlands, and there were a couple concerns that came forward to me yesterday, and I would like to just clarify a couple of things. In regards to the government-owned companies and 12.5% cut, the government of St. Martin and the Minister of Finance does not have any say in regards to how cuts are done within the entities. That is up to the entities and the management to determine how they will apply the 12.5% cut. We have given suggestions in the past on how we as a government made the cuts, and we leave it up to all government-owned companies to decide on the cuts. In addition to that, every government-owned company has different benefits when it comes to the salary packages. Actually, even more benefits than even government has. So it will be very difficult for us to go and calculate per government-owned entity where they have their own management, their own CFOs, and their own financial team to have this done. So I just want to clarify that again, that the government does not decide for any government-owned company on how to do the cuts. That'll be all. Rolika?
Thank you, Minister Edion, for your opening remarks. At this time, I would like to invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Silveira Jacobs, to address you. Prime Minister Jacobs, you have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Good morning to you. Good morning to my esteemed colleagues, as well as the media and all those following via whichever forms of media. This morning, I don't have that much to say for opening remarks, but I'd like to mention that from the Department of BUC, I'd like to announce that the government of St. Martin recently received the official go-ahead for the long-anticipated Shelters Project. The project is part of the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, the B envelope, which is aimed at building resilience by improving emergency response and disaster preparedness for the people of St. Martin. As such, 2 smart, safe, and green standards, multi-purpose shelters will be constructed, one in the South Reward area and the other in the Sucker Garden area. The first steering committee meeting is scheduled to take place in March of 2021, followed by a launch of the project. The project will have an implementation period of 31 months. Furthermore, a communication campaign will be launched informing and training persons in both communities about disaster preparedness. The shelters will also be outfitted and pre-stocked with emergency response kits and supplies. The implementation partner for this project is PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, the European Union, and the Ministries of General Affairs, VSA, and VROMI. This project is significant for disaster management and the building of resilience as it provides our communities with a safe and secure refuge in times of disaster. So that is pretty good news amidst all of the rest. Also, I'd like to update that as Government of St. Martin is the sole shareholder of the holding company of the Princess Juliana Airport, which is the sole shareholder of the operations company, government is doing what is necessary to ensure that good corporate governance is always executed at all levels of management, of not just this, but all government-owned companies. As shareholder, we will also be ensuring that the holding company, which answers directly to us, does what is in their mandate to do, without interference from outside parties, and as such have requested updates related to the ongoing reconstruction projects, the finances, as well as existing agreements. The letter of the World Bank will also be addressed in our extraordinary meeting of the Council of Ministers prior to sending a response, especially regarding the channels of communication with government regarding their concerns, especially seeing that government has pledged and has been committed to executing the projects that are already in implementation, of which the reconstruction of Princess Juliana International Airport is one of our top priorities. So as we meet as a council to deliberate on what has been submitted to us from the holding, etc., we will then respond in a letter to the World Bank. As such, as we see the letter actually ongepast, as they say in this, in the Netherlands and in Dutch, at this time, seeing that we already have agreements in place and corporate governance cannot be interfered with at any level. As it relates to the vaccine program, I'd like to congratulate CPS and the Ministry of VSA, who together with all stakeholders in and outside of government have launched their awareness campaign related to the COVID-19 vaccine in expectation of the batch that will arrive as expected next week. There are many stories rampant around the world, but we can rest assured that government is doing all it can to ensure that the general population is well informed about the vaccine. on a scientific level, but also understanding individually what the repercussions can be, as well as all the steps each will have to take to ensure that they are properly vaccinated. So I encourage all to follow all the webinars, the information session, as well as to take part in them to ensure that we are properly informed. As chair of the Council of Ministers, I have pledged to continue to support all efforts at keeping our population safe, as well as preventing the further spread of the virus, thereby getting our economy back on its feet. I'd like to also take time to remind the community to continue to move smart as you're out and about in the public. It is our behavior that will stop the spread of COVID-19. Do not become complacent and let your guard down. Continue to practice good hygiene, get healthy, exercise regularly, and also get enough rest. Maintaining a proper mental and emotional health is tantamount to keeping yourself healthy. So keep yourself and your loved ones safe by avoiding large gatherings, having proper mask usage, and keeping a social distance of at least 2 meters as much as possible. Your hand washing and respiratory etiquette also according to prescribed by CPS, and limit physical contact with persons outside your circle, such as handshaking, hugging, and kissing. I remain available for any further questions from the press. Thank you, Rolika.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, for your opening remarks. If you've just joined us, you are watching the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. Thank you for joining us. We now move on to the question and answer session. However, before we begin, I would like to inform that the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure is present in this morning's meeting, however, will not be making any...
Littering disrupts our progress as a nation, causing irreversible social, environmental, and financial damage. Our tiny nation must fight the harmful practice of disposing waste items anywhere and everywhere. The Ministry of ROMI encourages environmental pride by our residents and respectful use of the environment by visitors. This helps to keep our island clean. Littering causes harmful effects to our environment, such as trapping and poisoning of endangered animals, contaminated water that affects and kills marine life, potential fire hazards, destruction of vegetation in natural areas, transmission of germs which could potentially lead to disease outbreaks. For example, disposing of used face masks in the environment can aid in the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We can avoid permanent damage through very simple changes. Cleaning up after yourself in public spaces. Encourage others to do the same. If there are no waste bins in sight, take the garbage with you. Clean communities have a better chance of attracting businesses, residents, and tourists. Let us foster the change we want to see and lead by example. The Ministry of ROMI encourages environmental pride. It's an island thing. Dispose in a bin.
The floor is open, and I would now like to invite Lyndon Brown of BCN TV. You have the virtual floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin and the ministers that are present here today. Question to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, how it was possible that a letter that's supposed to be sent to the government of St. Martin released into the hands of the media? Could you expound on the letter? Because a lot of the time, people will interpret things maybe according to their own agenda. But is it in your power, Minister, that you can explain, even not a whole lot, but a little bit to the people of St. Martin?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Brown. Good morning to you. For me, I really cannot explain at this point how the letter made it to the media. It did not make it to the media via me, that is for sure. There has been many letters going back and forth to me. I find it very uncanny that this one made it to the media before we've even had an opportunity to handle it. I believe that letter came in when I was busy with Parliament, so I wasn't even aware of it on that day. Probably the following day I was made aware, then I was in Parliament again. So it did not get handled as yet. And as I mentioned in my opening statements, we as a government will be deliberating on that, as well as many other aspects of our, let's call it, agreements made with our donors, with those that are also funding the reconstruction at the airport, and everyone's sudden interest in the corporate governance, or who should have say in the corporate governance at the International Airport of St. Martin. I think my statements were very, very clear, Mr. Brown. It is not the first letter or document that has been leaked to the media. And I guess who leaked it knows why they did that. And I guess everyone has to be able to have a say. I prefer to deal with confidential matters in a confidential way until such time as we as government are ready to divulge what is necessary to the general public. So I'd like the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Lyndon, for the question. I would now like to invite PB Shaw of SMN News. You have the virtual floor.
Good morning, Rulaika, and good morning, everyone. My question I'm going to direct to the Prime Minister. Madam Prime Minister, can you explain us why some government-owned companies do not have a full supervisory board? And in this case, I'm referring to TALEM, because Prime Minister, it is my understanding, and I think there was a release on it also, that there is an operational audit taking place at TALEM after many, many years, and also an alleged criminal investigation. Not having a full board, how would this affect either one?
Sorry, I didn't catch the whole question. The first part of the question, Misha. You're muted, Misha.
Can you unmute yourself, BB? Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Prime Minister, what I'm asking you, if you can give us an explanation as to why some government-owned companies do not have a full supervisory board. For example, I'm referring now to TALEM, because Madam Prime Minister, I believe, my understanding, there's only 2 members on that board at the moment. There is an operation audit taking place and an alleged criminal investigation. What I'm asking you, Prime Minister, without a full board, how would it affect either one, the audit as well as whatever is taking place with law enforcement?
Thank you for that question. All processes that need to take place will continue to take place. While there is a minimum number at the board at the moment, government has submitted names to the Corporate Governance Council for vetting, and as soon as that process is finalized, then these persons will be appointed. In the meantime, the persons left on the board are authorized to continue to function legally, as that is not expected to be a long time. So any and all audits, etc., will continue.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, BB, for the question. I would now like to invite Dimitri Whitfield of the Daily Herald. You have the virtual floor.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Rulaika. Good morning to the Honorable Council of Ministers, to the Honorable Prime Minister, to the people of St. Martin, to my colleagues in the media, to everyone, good morning. I would like to ask my first question to the Prime Minister, seeing that the Minister of Health is not in the meeting, and maybe she can expound a little bit more on the vaccination strategy. Madam Prime Minister, Minister Panafleck last week stated that St. Martin is expected to receive the first batches of vaccine this coming Monday. Can you confirm whether this is still the case? Also, how many doses will we be receiving? And when will the vaccination start to be given?
Thank you for that question. I prefer, since you're asking some quite detailed information, that you submit those to the minister's cabinet in writing. What I can tell you is that I have sat in on meetings. The minister has updated the Council of Ministers. I have been out for the past 2 days, so I haven't received yesterday's update, but I did receive the written report of CPS in preparation for our CoM meeting yesterday, where I can see that the expectation is that they will be arriving next week. The quantity, etc., will be for the Minister of VSR to divulge to you. But know that it will be more than sufficient for our frontliners as well as those over 60, which form part of our phase 1 persons to be vaccinated. And it will be on a voluntary basis, so persons will have to sign up. And that's why I encourage all persons to, including all the medical frontliners and elderly, as well as family of elderly persons over 60 years, to ensure that they get all the information that is being put out by trusted sources, such as those that we recognize in health, but also those that are being brought, the information sessions that are being brought forth by our government. And we did endeavor also to ensure that we could touch on the multilingual capacity, the diversity that St. Martin also enjoys, to ensure that all are properly informed. So we expect that they will be here by mid-February, so that's about the 15th of February, and that there will be sufficient in the first batch to take care of our phase 1 persons. Further information can be had by the Minister of VSR.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Dimitri, for the question. I would now like to invite Jeffrey Dr. Sokran of Island 92 Radio. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Relika. Good morning to all of the ministers that are present and my fellow colleagues in the media and everyone listening. Last week at this, and I'd like to address this to our Prime Minister, the Honorable Severia Jacobs, if I might. Last week at this forum, we had a discussion with Minister Panafleck about the change from 72 hours to 120 hours, or 272 hours from 120 regarding the PCR test. And we were assured last week that the US market and the Canadian market would remain at 120 hours. The tourism website, vacationstmartin.com, reflected that change, yet the change was not reflected until this morning on stmartinentry.com, which is the electronic health application system site. Conflicting messages between the two sites, quite frankly, both of them are deemed to be official sources of information for our visitors, but it did create a fair amount of confusion and anxiety amongst our tourists, especially when we like to be known as the Friendly Island. So my question is, how do we fix this going forward, given the importance of crystal clear messaging, so we don't have this problem again? Because I'm sure there will be numerous other changes that are going to happen down the road. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, Dr. Sok. Yes, I did notice that there was some confusion, and though I was on some leave, I did take note of some emails going back and forth via our Minister of TEAT to ensure that the correct information was placed also in the St. Martin entry. This was a decision taken by our Council of Ministers, and of course there's the expectation that the communication would go to all concerned. I do not know at this time what caused the glitch, but we will ensure that in future everyone gets the same updates at the same time to avoid such confusion in the future. That's all I can say at this time. And of course, if there are further questions related to this, you would have to then send your email questions to the ministers of TEAT and VSA.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Dr. Sok, for the question. We now move on to the second round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the virtual floor.
Question to the Prime Minister. Honorable Sylvia Jacob. Minister, is that the union do not understand how the Dutch condition works? When the Dutch give St. Martin a condition, who are responsible? Who can change it, Minister? Because a lot of times people do not understand. I can hear your voice as you was in Parliament. You don't want to hurt the people of St. Martin, Prime Minister. And can you explain again? Arian just explained a little bit of it just now. But can you explain again to the union and to the people of St. Martin that when the Dutch give a condition, there can be a long process to discuss and negotiate?
Yes, I believe Minister Arian did explain in his opening remarks. I have for weeks been explaining. I have for months been having the clear and open discussion with the general public, with Parliament, with the unions, with all concerned, including the civil servants. We do not, as government, have a say in how subsidized entities and or government-owned companies will execute the conditions for the loan. It is a loan at the end of the day that government of St. Martin received in order to be able to meet its obligations, as well as to be able to pay the much needed salary support and unemployment to the persons who had lost jobs, etc., as a result of COVID-19. This is what the Dutch envisioned, that we would all feel the pinch, especially the top earners, and as such, that is why that is where the target was. I would have preferred, because say one, say two, as we say here in the Caribbean and specifically here in St. Martin, when there is little money, and some of us have grown up, we know how to make a dollar out of 50 cents, as you would say. We know how to make things stretch. Yeah, as a child with a single mother and 3 children, I know it firsthand, and I know my mother going without to ensure that we had. So I understand the pain of many of our persons, and in solidarity with those who would have no salaries at all, or a percentage of their salaries, just a percentage, as a result of COVID-19. Even though we begged, we pleaded, we were trying to ensure that the Dutch government understands that some of our workers in the private sector as well as in public sector are making close to minimum wage. Their only concession was that it should not go below minimum wage. That was their only concession. But we are still in the process as a country of assessing whether minimum wage is actually a livable wage, which we know it is not. And to address that will require us to have proper studies done to ensure that with any raising of a minimum wage, you don't have an immediate raising of the cost of living again. So the controls have to be in place, and therefore we cannot address one without the other. The fact of the matter remains that had we not gotten assistance from the Netherlands, had we gotten it elsewhere, it still would not have been sufficient to the point where we could afford to pay out everything. So the realities of us having to tighten our belts is a real one. How we do it, of course, had we not had to, let's call it, buckle to the demands of the Dutch, would have been up to us, because I don't think a bank could have told us how, to do what we need to do. Fact of the matter is also that for years, St. Martin had needed to address certain reforms, and the Dutch have tried to insist every time they give us some money to deal with that. They cannot force it, as we're a separate country in normal circumstances, but when you're down to, let's call it, almost nothing, we had to agree to things we didn't necessarily agree with, and I will continue to state such. And we will continue to fight off all and any vestiges of taking our autonomy away from us. So as a country, we're doing our best with the means that we have. The unions have been informed, both of government as well as the private sector. The government-owned companies and other private sectors will have to have those meetings with their unions moving forward. Now that the law has passed to some degree, it still has to go through its 6 weeks, whereby the Ombudsman can take it to the Constitutional Court. The Ombudsman is in possession of it and has been reviewing it. As such, we look forward to seeing if there are no qualms and it is published, that then it is executable and enforceable. How, according to the Minister of Finance a few minutes ago, will be up to those entities. We have decided as government not to touch salaries, and we've been able to do that. We have touched our own salaries, and I think has been no other government prior to us that has paid in 25% of their salaries and benefits to be able to be in solidarity to ensure our people get what is needed and what is coming to them. So I'm hoping by that I've clarified it once more to you, Mr. Brown, and all those who may still feel that there is something to be negotiated here. At this point, no. We'd like to avoid further negotiations that would hurt our people, and as such, we will continue to fight for that and keep the people informed accordingly. Thank you for that question.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Lyndon, for the question. I would now like to invite PB Shah of SMN News. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Relaika. My question is for the Minister of Education. Minister Samuel, in your opening remarks, you said that you did not receive questions from Parliament, and also the only 2 letters you received, I think one from Duncan and one from some other MP. But what I didn't hear you spoke about is the questions posed by Member of Parliament Bonkamper. Because then also on February 3rd, I posted a press release and a letter that was sent to you, Minister, regarding NEPA and scholarships for students studying nursing, etc. Also, I'd like to ask you if you can expound, Minister, and tell us exactly what was the reason why Sergio Blomont was sent home.
Thank you, Bibi, for the question asked. First, I would like to explain that I know, because of my being in Parliament, that when a member of Parliament sends questions to a minister, that those questions goes through the chairperson of Parliament, and then they come to the minister, and the minister then answers the question, sends them back to the chairperson of Parliament in order to make the answers available to the member of Parliament questioning whatever they need to question. I have explained that I did receive questions from 2 members of Parliament, and those questions are from January 26, from Member of Parliament Melissa Gomes, and that is document number UV111-2021, and also from Member of Parliament Duncan, and that is on the document number UV105-2020-2021. It is possible that the members of Parliament you mentioned have sent questions regarding NEPA, but as Minister, it is also very necessary that we await the questions from the members of Parliament so that we can answer them appropriately. And if questions are then posed in the media, and it is stated that they are coming from members of Parliament, it is still necessary for the minister to await, because probably it can take a while for the letters from the members of Parliament to reach the ministry. What I have done yesterday, because I have not seen these letters, is I have asked the administration to really do another look to check whether or not letters has come in. And up until yesterday, the end of the working day, 5 o'clock, these letters has not yet arrived to my person. It does not mean that they are not on their way, which I also mentioned. The topic from Mr. Blumont that is also that you're questioning this morning, most naturally, I did request from NEPA a clarification until I do receive questions to answer. And it is answered and provided to the minister that Mr. Blumont has not been removed and remains an employee in good standing with the NEPA. Mr. Blumont has not, since the inception of his employment, received any warning letters nor poor performance evaluation. I would like to leave that there as it is in regards to Mr. Blumont. So I hope I have answered your question, and I await any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Samuel, and thank you, Bibi, for the question. I would now like to invite Dimitri Whitfield. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you again, Relaika. I think this question can be answered both by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Romy. The Prime Minister mentioned earlier in the press briefing that the shelter project has been given the go-ahead, and this project is via PAHO and the EU. Ministers, can you clarify how does this project relate to the shelter repair program under the trust fund, if at all? In other words, what are the similarities and differences between these projects?
I was checking to see if the Minister of Romy would come on. The shelter projects related to the World Bank and Trust Fund are repairs of what we consider our current shelters. So areas that we've used over the years. So they were ensuring that they have, for instance, generators, water supply, etc., good roofs, etc. Those were being repaired. What this project is about is building 2 completely new shelters, so outside of the World Bank and the Trust Fund.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs. Minister Duran.
Good morning, Rolika. Good morning, colleague ministers. Good morning to members of the media and people of St. Martin. I believe the Prime Minister wrapped it up in a nutshell, so I don't see any need to further clarify. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Duran and Prime Minister Jacobs, as well as Dimitri for the question. I would now like to invite Jeffrey Sokran of Isle 92 Radio. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Rolika. Minister Duran, good morning. It's nice to see you this morning in the press briefing. I just wanted to take a moment, since we're in the same room at the same time, to follow up with the topic that we started to talk about a number of weeks ago, perhaps about 2 months ago now, with regard to how GB is progressing with the establishment of a solar policy that will be rolled out to the public. Is there anything new that you can share with us? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sak. Indeed, I remember this question coming up a couple of times. At the moment, I have no update from GB. As you know, GB is going through some unique times in terms of a management switch and all those different things. And basically, it's about maintaining what they have and continuing. So when the whole new strategic plan and those things come into play, once new management sits, then we can go deeper into the conversation. I had a meeting with them about 2 weeks ago, but this was regarding the whole street lighting around the island and vulnerable areas and so forth, but we did not touch on that point. But I do look forward to receiving it from them in due time once we have permanent management and we can move forward. So it's not on the back burner, but it's not at the forefront at the moment right now. So it's sort of in the middle, and I look forward to updating you once I receive the information from GB. Hope to have informed you sufficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Minister Duran, and thank you, Dr. Sak, for the question. We now move on to the third round of questions. Lyndon Brown, you have the virtual floor.
Question to the Minister of Education. Congratulations, and also I think I'm gonna tag both of also I have to congratulate Mr. Duran for the road paving, and also the emphasis is about the new safe house, okay, for the homeless and for the vulnerable for hurricane. Now, how the local contractors, Minister Samuel, and also the Prime Minister can also tag into it. What is the procedure for the local contractor to be the head of these new buildings? Can you walk us in, ministers? So tell the people how can they obtain a contract? Because the people of St. Martin must be first, not come first, be first in all of these development. So explain to the people where they can go, what they need to obtain contract to build these buildings.
Mr. Brown, thank you for the question. As it relates to building and receiving contracts to build, I believe it can be answered by the Minister of Romy in regards to bidding and those type of thing and stuff like that. So I would leave it up to my colleague to do this. I thank you.
Just for clarity's sake, you're speaking solely about the projects of the building of the new shelters, as was mentioned by the Prime Minister? Or in general? Your mic is muted, Mr. Brown.
Yes, Honorable. Yeah, also the school project, which 3 schools supposed to start build, and plus the shelters. So I'm speaking, how can the local contractors get the opportunity?
Okay. Well, with regards to the schools and also any sort of construction or government or semi-government project, it all follows a tender procedure that is always published and gives opportunity for anyone to subscribe to it. There are, of course, certain conditions, and the relevant company or relevant stakeholders that are involved in the bidding have to adhere to the regulations based on the specific tender, based on the terms of reference, of course. So whatever regulations and rules are in place for that specific tender, the company would have to adhere to it. And I do agree with you that local contractors and local businesses should come first. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and therefore I would urge the local businesses to make sure, once applying for these projects, to make sure have all the relevant documentation in order to be able to qualify. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Duran, and thank you, Lyndon Brown, for the question. I would now like to invite BB Shaw. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Relaika. Relaika, is this our last round of questions?
BB, we have about 17 or 18 more minutes left, so we will just have to determine as we go.
All right, because I have 2 questions and I'm trying to decide which one should go. And while we do not have the Minister of VSA and the Minister of TIAT here, I'll pose this question to the Prime Minister so that we can at least bring get some kind of information, as long as the Council of Ministers have it. Prime Minister Jacobs, last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, the announcement was made about the testing tent or whatever it is at the resorts for the antigen test for COVID. The antigen test that can be taken, that will take place to meet the CDC requirement for tourists or visitors, anybody that is leaving St. Martin going into the U.S. should have a negative COVID-19 test. There was a lab or a mini lab set up in one of the resorts in Simpson Bay for this. But then on January 29th, a policy or a guideline was written by the Inspectorate of VSA. That policy is floating around. And there is a main question, Prime Minister. This guideline is saying, and which I do understand, that CDC is asking for a test from a recognized lab, which is SLS and HCLS. What I'm asking you, when these tourists or visitors or people going to the U.S. taking these antigen tests outside of these 2 labs, will they have to pay a double fee? Because if they do a test by the resort and they need to get a report from either lab, will they have to pay for that report excess?
Thank you for the question. Again, I will divert it to the ministers of TIAT and VSA who made the arrangements. What I can say, though, is that from the meetings that I have attended and gotten updates on, the lab, one of the labs is involved with this other, let's call it, location. So it is lab supported by one of the mentioned labs that you mentioned, one of the authorized labs. So I believe in that regard, it is not an outside, is not a lab outside of. It is being run by the lab, and therefore it has the same authentication. So there shouldn't be any problem.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Bibi, for the question. I would now like to invite Dimitri Whitfield. You have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Relaika. My third question is to the Prime Minister. Madam Prime Minister, you mentioned earlier in the press briefing about the World Bank letter to yourself, and you also said that government is ensuring that proper corporate governance takes place at the airport holding and operating companies. What is government's position regarding the leadership of the operating company? And what is the position regarding the holding company's attempts to shake up management?
Thank you for that question. I believe this question was asked of me the last time a letter was leaked or there was a push regarding government to quote unquote interfere in the management of the company. As I tried to be quite clear in my opening statements, let me reiterate. Government is the holding or the shareholder of the holding company and has the right to hold the holding company accountable. As such, we've made the requests, we've asked for reports, etc., from the holding company, which we have to review. As part of our corporate governance improvement at the airport, we also had to peruse, or they had to submit competencies and what's the other area? Qualifications and competencies that board members should have. This has been submitted to us. We also have to give our feedback on that. So they have done their due diligence where that is concerned. As the holding company, they are to hold the operating accountable. And so they, of course, cannot be on any witch hunt as such, but it is within their purview to hold the management of the company accountable for whatever is going on at the company. We as government cannot interfere in what they do. They only have to report on what they're doing. And if they are not doing what is within their purview to do, then we as holding of the holding company can take our measures. But we cannot take measures without evidence, as I have explained to all those who have concerns about agreements or whatever the case may be at whatever stage we are in. Within any company, there can be persons who are found to be not fitting, not competent, or whatever the case is. The onus is upon their higher ups, the ones they have to report to be able to prove such, to have the documentation for such. Yes, it is not government's purview to do that. We have to hold the holding company accountable, and so therefore that is what we're doing. I'm hoping that makes it very, very clear at this point. There should be, if there is a discussion from the get-go that we now have a corporate governance council, we have even a corporate governance task force as a result of the whole financing of the airport in place that is giving suggestions as to how to have proper governance. We are regulating right up to our eyeballs. As such, government must have a hands-off approach. We can only do what it is in our purview to do, and the holding can only do what is in their purview to do. But if we're talking about ensuring that there is no excessive political interference in the running of our government-owned companies, we should also ensure that there is no excessive political interference from outside of St. Martin in the running of our government-owned companies. And by that, I hope I'm very, very clear.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Dimitri, for the question. Members of the media, this will be the last round of questions. Jeffrey Sockern, you have the final question.
Thank you so much. Madam Prime Minister, you're apparently on the hot seat today, so I apologize. Last week, let me give you some of the background, if I might. Last week, in response to one of the questions that I asked in this forum, Minister Penafleck asked why our visitors were so reliant on the RT-PCR test versus our accepted rapid antigen tests. And before the recent update, which was this morning, adding the Sophia test to our list, many of our accepted tests, which were 4 at the time, were just simply not available in many of our major U.S. markets, including New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Florida, Illinois, Arizona, California, and the list goes on. The good news that Sophia test is now available in New York and Pennsylvania, so I think that will help us. The thing that I'm a little concerned about, gets me back to the same thing we talked about earlier this morning, was communication. I'm in possession of an email from a staff member who mans the electronic health application system that was assisting a visitor that told them point blank that we are now accepting a test that is not on the list. It was the Abbott ID Now test that they were told to go and take. So I guess my question is this: are we adding Abbott ID now or not? And how do we make sure that we just stop the confusion? And you know, I'm sure you sense my confusion and frustration as well. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Sakrin. I agree that, and I must say, I commend you for standing for our visitors. We do need them to be able to maintain our level of our economy at this moment. And so confusion that would mess up their ability to come to the island is of course not good. I have no clue as to what test you're referring to. And I even reviewed what I saw in the email going back and forth myself internally in terms of what tests were allowed that is announced on our thematic, that via the thematic to the world. And so all I can do at this point is to ensure that these concerns are brought forward to the relevant ministers of VSA and TEAT, to ensure that there is across the board clarity as to what tests are allowed and that is put out in the, let's say, in the correct media so that our visitors can have a safe and let's call it seamless transition from their homes to our shores and back. What I do know is that we know that the US and Canada is our main market. And as such, we have made certain concessions to ensure, and seeing that we've had very low to none detected for our tourists. All of the detected positive cases thus far, for the most part, have been via our returning residents in any case. So in that way, we are also stepping up that the residents do more testing before arrival to avoid any further. Okay, so I'm just getting some info here. Let me read it off of the info provided on our site, stmartinentry.com. So it is the BD Veritor Plus, the Abbott PanBio, Abbott Binax Now, and the Roche/SD Biosensor F test that they are accepting. I don't know if it's the one you asked about. I didn't hear the one you asked about, but if that will be added, then, or if they are now adding it, it still has to be updated on our website.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'll forward you the name of the test. Thank you very much.
I will forward it to the Minister of VSA and then have him do that, because trust me, I really have enough on my plate.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Thank you.
In their absence, I'm happy to field questions, but definitely the responsibility remains by them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister Jacobs, and thank you, Dr. Salk, for the question. Members of the Media Council of Ministers, this does bring us to the end of the question and answer session. Members of the media, thank you once again for joining us. Honorable Ministers of the Council, members of the media, radio listeners, and online viewers, this brings us to the end of the live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, February 10, 2021. For rebroadcast, tune in to St. Martin Gov Radio 107.9 FM, the official Facebook page of the Government of St. Martin, the YouTube channel Government of St. Martin, and St. Martin Cable TV, channel 115. For video on demand, log on to the official government's website at stmartingov.org. On behalf of the Department of Communication and the Government of St. Martin, I'm Relika Roach, and wishing you a pleasant day further.